So I've got plenty of time. I'm going to run through some slides. I tried to pick out things that I thought you'd be interested in, and we'll have plenty of times for Q&A. Better get my glasses here. So we can start off with the first question. What is NSF's reaction to the change in administration? Okay, so now on with the talk. So here's what I thought you'd be interested in. I'll talk a little bit about some trends, particularly those at NSF, so you can get a feeling for what's going on with us. I want to spend a period of time on a project that we've been working on for about the last year and a half in concert with the community as well as those at NSF on the big ideas that we're putting forward for the future. A number of pilots that I think a number of you might have been heard about in the past, and try to tell you where we are on those. And then I think almost all of you must have participated in some way in a survey that we did about a year and a half ago. And so I thought I'd just give you some of the summary and what we're doing with the results of that survey. So big picture, here's NSF. I always like to do this one. $7.5 billion budget, 94% of the dollars go to you all. And I pause here because I know that all universities, if you do the calculation, that's a 6% overhead. 6% overhead. How many of you have a 6% overhead, can run your... It's really not possible, right, when you think about it. It's kind of, it's a foreign concept. It's a foreign concept to the federal agencies too, by the way. So why is this? That is, why can NSF have an overhead of 6%, maybe 7%? Marty corrects me. I know there. See, Marty telling me that's an old number. We don't really do research, right? You all do the research. That is, we fund the community to do the research. So the folks at NSF, we don't have labs. You know, we rent a building, and so it's a very different agency than most of the other agencies you're familiar with. I view it as, you know, we work for the community, and I think that's what that data really shows you. You can see the workload we end up with. You all generate of the order of about 50,000 proposals each year, and you go to the next column and you can see we fund about 20-25% of those. That is about 12,000 awards. Lots of institutions that we interact with, lots of researchers. You can see there, third of $1 billion. The interesting part about NSF, unlike all the other agencies, is we fund every area. We don't fund medical research because we don't duplicate NIH, but on the other hand, all the other areas of STEM are eligible for us, and then you can see some of the data there. This is a plot that I've been showing all over to try to show you what's happened to the agency since the 90s. So first of all, why would I pick? So this is change. It's change on the left-hand side, years on going across the bottom. Why did I pick 1990? It turns out in 88 or 89 is when we first started to do electronic kinds of activities. So that's why I picked that as kind of the datum. And take a look at what's happened at the number of people that come to us. You can see it's gone up. It's essentially doubled in 25 years. And those are unique folks, PIs and co-PIs. So the community has just grown tremendously. You can take a look at the kind of greenish line, and that's the number of proposals that we've received in those same years. And again, it's gone up by about around 70%. If you go down, and unfortunately the budget didn't track as well as the people and proposals did, so you can see the decline in the funding rate. So note that's a decline. Is down about a third, 27% down from where we once were, and then you can see what's happened to our staff. Just so, because I always get the question about that dip in funding rate and the giant increase in proposals. That was the funding activity that we had that one year that everyone celebrates, by the way, from the point of view of funding rate. But on the other hand, it was a lot of workload, and they're out of phase because the proposals get kind of managed a year later. So anyway, this is the kind of trend we're seeing in the community. You can see in the early 2000s, we did okay. We increased the community, we increased the number of proposals. Funding rate didn't decrease too rapidly, but then unfortunately since then, our budget has tended to be, in real dollars it's flat, but tend to be relatively flat. So that kind of explains what's happened to the funding rate. Now, we typically get a question, well, how much more money do you need? And of course, we just make up a number. No, we try to give some kind of analysis here on how you would actually argue how much resources you would need. And so this is a cumulative amount of money that we decline, and this is 2015. So 5 is, these are ratings on your proposals, so 5 is obviously the best you're going to do, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so if you move from 5 to the right, you can see these are the cumulative amount of dollars that are asked for that we do not fund by their rating. Okay, so I would argue 3 and 4s are good results, and you can see we're declining billions of dollars. The total amount declined is 21.5 billion. Okay, this turns out to be 2015. Okay, so the average score of an award is 4.2. So if you go to the 4.2 cumulative number there, you see it's about 1.7 billion. So our argument is that of the quality that we fund, there's about $2 billion worth of ideas that we're not able to fund. And so we're a $7.5 billion agency, so you can see the argument, and you probably, if you watched our director, she'll often say we need $2 billion more, and that's where that comes from. So it's not a made-up number. It's not something that we pulled out of the air. There's a justification for it. And obviously, I would even argue you could even go down further in the ratings and be viable, because I think that a lot of the good proposals are still in that area. So this is what's happening at the agency. So the last year, maybe year and a half, we've worked a lot with the community in order to try to plan a future. Obviously, we receive proposals from the community. They're community-driven ideas. We get them reviewed and we fund them. On the other hand, we wanted to try to be a little more proactive in the future, and so we laid out what the directors called the big ideas for investment in the future. And we've grouped them into 2 areas, and this kind of occurred naturally. It wasn't planned. Over like I said, about the year and a half, we worked with the community, we worked with our staff, and it ended up coming in these 2 buckets: research ideas, that is ideas for discovery, and then the bottom part are process ideas, those which we think we should be doing within NSF in order to better lead the community. And so I'm going to run through these to set the context for a video you're going to see. So I firmly believe, I've said this all the time, that the best ideas are in the hands of the individuals that generate them. And so I'm going to show you a video of the team leaders, because they're the ones that are really passionate about this, and I think you'll see that in the passion in their presentations. But I wanted to kind of set the stage. So in the research ideas, there are 6 of them. This one on this slide, the first one here, is called multi-messenger. You're going to hear a discussion about the fact that now we can measure gravitational waves. We've been measuring electromagnetic waves, and we've been measuring neutrinos and particles. And so now how do we take these 3 measurement devices, if you will, and actually then investigate, okay, and try to imagine what we can do with these 3 techniques. The one on the bottom left that you're going to hear about is about the rules of life. Dr. Olds will explain that one in the video. Quantum leap is, we've done so much with quantum information, quantum theory. Now it's in time for the next step, and that's what that one will be about. Excuse me. The next 3 are data, and I think that's not surprising to most people. And when you hear Dr. Carusa talk about that, I think you'll understand what that one's coming from. The middle one here is navigating the Arctic, and I think if you've been paying attention to a lot of the discussion that's gone on in the popular press, and you'll hear it here, what goes on in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic. And so you're going to hear that one. And then this last one is on human technology, which is a gigantic area. You're going to hear the focus being, though, on the nature of work and what we all do there. So those are the research ideas you're going to hear about. You're also going to hear about these 4 elements. And I've been told that this is a very bad word. I should come up with a new word for process ideas, something a little more dynamic. But anyway, these are our processes. We're going to talk a lot about concludes, and I hope you've all heard about it, and I want to end with a slide to talk about the next steps. NSF 2050 is a concept of trying to build our agency, but more the community, to the next 20, 30, 40 years. And so that's the idea of that one. On the multi-scale research infrastructure, you're going to hear about the fact that the foundation does what I consider to be a very good job funding in the $5 million and below range. They do a great job in building facilities in the $100 million range. There's this gap, and that's what that picture shows you, that we just don't fund. And so how are we going to handle that? We as an agency have to figure that out, and you'll hear some of the comments on that. And then this growing convergent research element. there's been a lot of discussion about, quote, convergent research, and we can talk a lot about it in the Q&A if you'd like. I typically don't want to argue about whether it's transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, convergent. The idea is, though, that we as an agency need to be a better resource for funds in these kinds of areas that are kind of commingling, if you will, and that's what this one's about. So let me make sure that this will work.
Looking to the future, NSF is envisioning bold questions, big ideas that will drive important aspects of NSF's long-term research agenda and ensure coming generations will continue to reap the benefits of all that fundamental research in science and engineering can bring.
Imagine someone watching a game of chess, but they don't know the rules. They can't possibly predict with any confidence what a player's next move might be. Likewise, without knowing the basic rules of how genes function and interact with the environment, we cannot predict with any certainty what life's next move will be. The goal of this big idea is to address how we predict the phenotype, the structure, function, and behavior of an organism based on what we know about its genes and environment. If we can identify some of the basic rules of life across scales of time, space, and complexity, we may be able to predict how cells, brains, bodies, and biomes will respond to changing environments. Imagine a world in which we can predict with confidence how crops will grow in extreme temperatures or why cells will become malignant. In that world, we can make a better life for us all. We can provide a safe and stable food supply. We can use the body's own immune system to defeat cancer. You'll never get to checkmate if you don't know the rules.
Did you know that the Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet? That affects not only the people who live there, but all of us, because what happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic. Melting snow and ice means sea levels will rise, weather patterns are changing, and extreme weather is more frequent. Thawing permafrost and coastal erosion threaten towns and roads, and ecosystem shifts on land and sea affect food supplies. The warming Arctic also means more access for shipping and tourism, and to resources such as oil, gas, and minerals that are important to our economy and our national security. To get a handle on these rapid and widespread changes, NSF will lead by accelerating the pace of Arctic research and developing an innovative, interconnected observing system that engages Native people and the public. NSF and our federal, state, and international partners are committed to working together to acquire the data and predictive capabilities urgently needed to navigate the new Arctic.
Harnessing the data revolution is NSF's forward-looking big idea aimed at fundamental data science research, research data cyber infrastructure, and the development of a 21st century data-capable workforce. The confluence of three advances, massive amounts of data becoming online in digital form, massive amounts of computation, and new algorithms for detecting hidden correlations and patterns in this data have allowed researchers to ask fundamentally new questions and generate new answers, generating new knowledge and understanding and accelerating discovery and innovation. Beyond science and engineering, harnessing the data revolution will help our cities, workplaces, and other environments become more livable through the delivery of smart services informed by data. For example, reduced highway congestion and public transport congestion can be achieved through data-driven smart scheduling. Better living through ones and zeros.
The world is on the threshold of the next quantum revolution, and NSF will lead the way. Quantum phenomena rest on the behavior of infinitesimal particles and tiny amounts of energy that, if properly harnessed, will lead to new technological breakthroughs. The quantum leap is a cross-NSF approach to these phenomena that will answer deep underlying questions and address problems key to innovation. Many of the profound technological achievements of the 20th century rest on quantum ideas, and we are now prepared to further exploit them to create a new quantum revolution. This revolution will bring us more secure communication, sensors with unprecedented capabilities, and new ways of understanding the world around us that will change every facet of science, society, and even future job markets. Intellectual opportunity, broad national interest, and international competition make the quantum leap a compelling topic that ties together physical science, computer science, and engineering in a transformative enterprise.
The world of work is changing. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, the Internet of Things, robotics, new and emerging technologies are transforming the ways in which we produce goods, provide services, and collaborate with our colleagues. We are on the cusp of a major transformation in the workplace. The workplace of tomorrow is going to feature a symbiotic coexistence, a collaboration among humans and machines in cyberspace. Work at the human technology frontier will catalyze the interdisciplinary science and engineering research needed, first, to understand the benefits as well as the risk of new technologies, and second, to enable the creation of technologies with which humans collaborate to enrich their lives in the future world of work. Today, we have a unique opportunity to actively shape that future, to use technology to improve the quality of work and ultimately to increase productivity and economic growth.
400 years ago, Galileo turned his telescope to the heavens and viewed the universe with new eyes. Today, we have come to a special moment in viewing the universe. We've learned to observe across the electromagnetic spectrum from radio waves to gamma rays. And now we are ready to look in fundamentally different ways with a powerful collection of approaches enabled by NSF. Just as electromagnetic radiation gives us one view of the cosmos, particles such as neutrinos and cosmic rays provide a different view, and gravitational waves yet another. Each of these messengers comes through a different window and reveals aspects that are invisible in the others. Taken together, they're the means of answering profound questions. How did the universe begin? Why is the universe accelerating? What is the unseen matter that constitutes much of the world around us? How does gravity work under the most extreme conditions? Opening these new windows allows us to answer these questions by viewing the universe as never before.
The grand challenges of today, exploring the universe at all scales, understanding the human brain, developing resilient and sustainable infrastructure, and responses to extreme events and geohazards will not be solved by one discipline alone. They require convergence, the merging of ideas, approaches, tools, and technologies from widely diverse fields of knowledge to stimulate innovation and discovery. With its deep connections to all fields of science and technology, NSF will help build and support creative partnerships and the creative thinking needed to explore intellectual opportunities and address issues of great importance to society. Why convergence? One example. The convergence of engineering and medicine is necessary to develop the microelectronic implants that can cure blindness. Another example, to make progress in advanced manufacturing. We need smart materials, green manufacturing, 3D printing, home manufacturing, and construction automation to enhance the domestic manufacturing base. But the examples and the potential benefits for convergence are really endless.
When scientists talk about infrastructure, they're talking about experimental tools, telescopes, particle detectors, research vessels, sensor networks, and high-performance computers. It's been said that new directions in science are launched by new tools much more often than by new concepts. So research infrastructure is important. NSF currently has a program for research infrastructure up to $4 million, and then a program for really large and complex infrastructure, like research vessels and telescopes, where the investment level is $100 million and up. Mid-scale infrastructure lies between these thresholds. The aim of this big idea is to bridge this gap to provide an agile and effective means of supporting mid-scale research infrastructure so that important science is not left on the drawing board undone.
What will the world be like in 2050? What novel or unique scientific, engineering, and education challenges will humanity face on the way to that future? We propose the creation of the NSF 2050 Fund. It will allow for systematic community input into long-term program development and capture the imagination of critical stakeholders. It intends to transcend established scientific structures and standard operating procedures to make high payoff, high risk investments in areas that do not fit into any particular program box.
The U.S. is experiencing a dramatic
Okay, she was going to tell you in much better way than I about the Includes project, which is an effort that we're trying to, I would argue, team folks from around the country who have great ideas on broadening participation, and she would do this better than I, and in an attempt to try to really move the needle. In my words, the agency's invested of the order of $700 billion a year for I don't know how many years, and if we look at what's happening in broadening participation, the needle has not changed. How do we make a difference? Includes is intended to do that. We've funded about 40 projects already, and since it's not going to work, the final slide that I was going to give you is to let you know that this is just the beginning. So and what happened is we tried to push this out so fast that a number of people got excluded that we just they couldn't handle the short time frame that we had. We were able to fund 40 projects. You will have another opportunity. The solicitation is out there now to do it again. And so the whole goal of Includes, which is what the director would have ended with, is an attempt to try to ensure that we have a STEM workforce that's fully diversified, in my words. So anyway, sorry about the video. I didn't say anything, Gene. Let me just do a couple more things, and then we'll open it up to questions. I wanted to kind of run through a number of experiments that we've been working on at the foundation, typically with the goal to try to figure out how we can reduce all of the efforts that if you saw on my previous chart, we have so many more folks, not as many dollars, and so how do we actually make this as efficient and effective as we possibly can? I know a number of you have probably participated, or your faculty have participated in virtual panels. Quarter to a third of our panels now are done virtually, depending upon how you measure it. For those of you that were in the graduate fellowship activity, that's totally virtual now. And so the whole idea here is this is a mechanism that we can actually engage what I would call a larger group of folks, because a number of people just can't make it to NSF to do our panels. I personally believe in panels. I believe that we have to have them on site. I believe that the community gains a lot by congregating. But there is, a balance that we're trying to reach here. And so I think, I hope that the virtual panels will still stay in some form. We did have a lot of pressure, by the way, to move entirely to virtual panels, okay, when we've resisted it. The next one is done by Bio. This is a pre-proposal proposal activity. Pre-proposals are smaller. The idea is to try to get those decisions made with less work on the community, and then the ones that are down selected could put the effort into the 15-page proposals, and therefore we thought they could reduce workload. Mixed results, I can tell you. There are those that believe that 5 pages is like 15. We hear that often. I'm not so sure. There are those also that because of the timing, we can only have one round a year. They believe that that's not sufficient for particularly young folks. I buy that argument. So my only point is, the Bio in this case is trying to work with that input. The 1+ is an SBE model, Social Behavioral and Economic Sciences Directorate model, where they actually do a first round of proposals fund, and then those that are deemed to be potentially fundable, a very select few are then gone back. They go back to the community or back to the PIs, give them the input, and ask them to revise their proposals with a much higher success rate for that group, because obviously they've had input and another chance. Asynchronous review discussion kind of has this, you're going to hear this theme, the ability for reviewers to be able to interact while they're doing the review at their home institutions, so that they can actually exchange comments back and forth with themselves as well as with the programs, in the attempt to try to come then to NSF or come to the panels and be far more effective and efficient, okay, in providing the review analysis. Mechanical, it's called, this is called mechanistic design. For those of you that know game theory, it's basically a game theory approach where you basically have a group of PIs who submit proposals, but they review those proposals. Not their own, of course, but that in the group. And then, okay, so I can see these, now people are paying attention. Okay, so the idea here is that you submit 5 proposals, you're going to review a fraction relative to the number of proposals you submit. So there's an automatic adjustment here for the folks submitting proposals know that their workload is going to go if they submit too many. Okay. By the way, when it worked, it really did work too. People did not submit a lot of proposals to this. How can you let a person review proposals in the same group that they're going to get funded from? Okay, there's a penalty mechanism. If you know, I don't know game theory, but this is the way it was explained. You actually penalize people based upon how far their reviews are off of their average. Okay, and then that and they know this ahead of time, so that moderates them. And so this was done in one case. It's also done, I understand, in telescope time allocation. Same kind of mechanism. It's a game theory approach. Anyway, it's been tried. The outcome of that one was, for the reasons I'm watching your faces, it's a bit questionable by some folks, but it did control the proposals and the workload. So it did have that outcome. Program deadline elimination, this is a fascinating one. So most of the program and directorates at NSF have deadlines, 1, 2 a year, whatever it might be. And human nature, in my explanation, is that they hit deadlines. People do hit deadlines. GEO said, okay, fine, no deadlines. Submit proposals whenever you want. Proposals went way down. I don't remember the number, but I think it was down like a half. I mean, it was impressive. If you think about workload now, right? Workload on PIs, particularly, they're not submitting as many proposals in this case. Would that scale? That's the big question, right? So with the whole agency, remember, we used to do this. If I go back to '88 when I was here before, this is the way it always worked. You submitted proposals, we got them reviewed. Okay, what if the whole agency went this way? Would the workload, that is, of the PIs and the staff go down? Big question mark. GEO's investigating this in a little broader case now in a couple of other of the areas. Electronic polling is this idea of actually letting reviewers exchange information as they're doing the review, and so they can kind of poll how the reviews are coming ahead of time before they show up in an attempt to try to make the panel more efficient. And then the College of Reviewers is an idea where you actually group a set of reviewers for a period of time and they agree to do it. Therefore, see, what happens, unfortunately, is you end up with a lot of requests for reviews that don't come in. Okay, people are busy, they've got other things to do, so they don't complete the reviews. But by signing up for this, quote, college, you're making a commitment for 2, 3, 4 years that you will do those reviews. And it turns out that the response rate for the reviews has gone up. So I think that's really a really good outcome. The one that you're going to hear about, or your PIs are going to hear about, that's not on this list, it's related to paneling, is we've developed an unconscious bias webinar. And so when the proposals, when your PIs are asked to review proposals, there's going to be a virtual webinar with the program director for that group of proposals to go through quality reviewing, unconscious bias, and all prior to their review of the proposals. You know they're going to review, they don't have their proposals yet, they're going to go through this kind of what I would call training, conflict of interest training is also included in it, ahead of the review. And the goal here is to try to make sure that when you dive in, or when the PIs dive into the review, they're doing the best job they possibly can from all aspects. Then they get their proposals, then they do their panels and so forth. So that's one that's going to be coming out this year. Okay. Now, those of you sitting in the corner can see this, and the rest of you are saying, why did he put all that stuff up there? I can't read. Let me explain this, and I'm going to give you a summary in the end. This is a survey we did, and let me just do this one. It says, select up to 3 proposal sections that place an unreasonable administrative burden on you during the proposal preparation process. On your left, it says SPOs, those are sponsored program officers, that responded, and you can't see the number, 95 did, so about 100 universities responded. On the right-hand side are the PI responses, 3,616 responses, a pretty good response rate, by the way. The reason for showing you this is that you can see the difference. So the first line says, on the PI says, data management plan is the section that they feel is adios. They want it out of there. Okay, not going to happen, by the way. Okay. But that's what they would want, okay? The second one is the mentoring plan, the third one is the budget, and the fourth one is current and pending support. So that's on your right-hand side, because I know you can't read it. Okay, by the way, I forgot to say, all this is available to you. We made a PDF. You can have all the slides, and the video, by the way, will be posted on the website, so if you want to take a look at that again, or send it to your colleagues, that's fine too. Okay, on the left-hand side is the sponsored program office. They think the biggest burden is current and pending support. Does not agree with the PI, right? Makes some sense, though, right? Because current pending is it's tricky. You got to keep it up to date. It's got to be true at submission, and the PI is hopefully relying on the sponsor program to fill that in. So the sponsor program folks think that's tough, and then they don't on the other side. Data management plans tend to be high. Look what happened to the mentoring plan, though. I thought that was fascinating. Mentoring plan was second on the right-hand side, and whoop, sponsor program offices don't care about that. Okay, so, but again, we get a feeling for where the issues are from the point of view of who we are serving. Next question, how helpful or unhelpful would the following efforts be in reducing administrative burden that you experience when preparing a proposal? Please select 5, and we gave them a list to choose from, so it wasn't free form. They could put free form, but I didn't give you those. So again, on the left-hand side, now they have 5 choices, so we had about 1,000 inputs, and on the right-hand side, your right-hand side, the PIs had about 15,000 inputs. Okay, so the PIs say pre-populating proposal with existing data. Makes sense, right? I'm a PI, I don't want to keep on doing this. Do it for me, right? I was a faculty member, I know how this works. The second one on the PI side says allowing documents allowing certain documents upon approval. So the idea is there, do I need to do a budget? Do I need to do a mentoring plan? I might not get funded. When you tell me I'm going to get funded, I will give you all that information. That's what that one's about. And then revising the format for solicitations. In my words, this means, come on, be a little more, don't give me 100 different ways to submit a proposal. Give me 1 or 2 or 3. So that's on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, revising the format for the solicitations was the highest for those that actually fill them all out, right? I thought that was good. And then pre-populating it on down. So you can kind of get a feeling for the kind of data we get. I have a bias towards PIs, right? The ideas are there, so I have a bias, and then all you are going to say no. Okay, so here's a summary. And I think this is the one where you can start to see some agreement, because the green are the sponsor program folks and the gray are the PIs. Top one is the streamlined idea. That is, do the budgets when you need them, do whatever the sections are only when you need them. Don't make me do them ahead of time if I'm not going to get funded. That's the first one. Second one is, which is one that those folks down there will tell me I've driven them crazy on. Additional improved compliance warning. You weren't supposed to agree so quickly. Compliance warnings, and then the next one is clarification of compliance rules for successful proposal submission. And then it says interaction with program staff and FastLane activities. So, summary of all that information. What we learned is the data management plan, budget, mentoring plan, and current pending support were the greatest burden in general. The request was primarily for pre-population of data or just-in-time proposal selection submission, and then revisions to the solution format. And then I've listed those things that I just read to you. That is, streamline proposal requirements, improve compliance warning and errors, and clarify our rules. So with that, this is what you're going to hear about tomorrow. The NSF's proposal and award policy and procedures guide. And so you'll hear a lot about that, and again, it becomes effective at the end of this month, so I won't spend some time on that. So here's what we've been spending some time on, and this is the reason why they don't appreciate me. We've put a lot of effort into this. And let's look at the goals. We need to enhance our proposal preparation and submission processes. We need to reduce the burden on PIs, on the organizations, as well as our own staff. And we need to ensure that when a proposal gets in, it meets all the requirements and isn't returned at some other later point. It turns out, I was surprised, it's about, 4% of the proposals that come to NSF are returned without review. Okay, think about that. This person, this is their child, right? This is their best idea, and we just send it back to them and say, adios, it's gone, we're not going to review it, you had something wrong. Okay, that's the saddest thing that can possibly happen, in my opinion. We don't even get a chance to take a look at the great idea. So, what's the approach? As Jean will tell you, we're trying our darndest, and she's worked very hard to try to clarify everything in our PAPPG. I would like to reduce the number of possible proposal formats so that you as staff and PIs in submitting don't have to go through 100 different options. I would like to automate everything we possibly can so that when you submit a proposal, you'll know that it's going to at least be accepted. And then that's tied to the next one. I don't want individuals within NSF returning your proposal without review on what might appear to you, although it's not, on some subjective idea. So, final slide. I think you've seen some of this before. We're pushing hard on automatic compliance checking. Second one is every year you're going to see a little more ability on our part in order to be able to get clarity in some of our requests of you. There's going to be a next round of checks that are just coming out at the end of the month to tell you what they are. We've got a couple of new proposal formats that are going to be able to be checked, and then and you can see the full list is on that website. And then what we're trying to do is to change some of the warnings into errors. Okay, every time I say that to myself, that sounds bad, right? Isn't a warning better than an error? The problem is if you submit a proposal and you get back a warning, it still could not comply with whatever that particular proposal request was about. I want them all to be errors, so that therefore you're sitting in your office, you're submitting it, and it comes immediately back to you and says unacceptable. You know what to fix. You can fix it, get it in, and once it's in, and it's accepted. That's the overall goal. I think if we ever got there, okay, and I think that they're making tremendous progress. If we get there, then you will have some guarantee that the idea will be reviewed, and I think that's what NSF is about. Anyway, with that, why do I end up with a building? Anybody know why? You will all be there next year. So this is where NSF is going to be. We're moving, okay? Let me tell you another little story. I just can't believe this one. We will be functional in this building October 1 of this year. We will move the whole agency from Arlington to Alexandria in 6 weeks. We will still have panels, reviews simultaneously. For those of you that have ever dealt with construction and or moving, it's an impossibility, right? You always shut down a lab and move the lab and then come back up. Not us. So anyway, great group of folks working on the move. You'll all be there should you ever come to NSF after October 1. Thank you all, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Should I give my plug for the next one here, the 21st Century Cures presentation? Not even my talk. Research Policy Board, great idea. We got to make sure this works, but that's a side plug. Go ahead. Any? Please. Oh, dude. Okay, so so this is the beauty of standing up here. I get to reword the question in the way I want to answer it. So his point is that the data management plans are extremely vaguely defined. And in fact, if you even go from engineering to size to MPS, they're all different. Okay, I would argue. And I think your point is that you're arguing we're kind of premature. So my argument is it's going to come. We really don't have much of a choice the way all publications are going now regarding making our data available, so it's going to happen. I tend to agree with you if your point is that we're a little vague on the way we actually do this. Now let me give, so Howie's in the audience, let me give you the story. So when I was back at BPR, this started to come out, and so I got a group of folks together from around, this turned to be Purdue, and said, okay, let's try to get some commonality in data management plans and see if we can come up with some kind of a structure. What you learn immediately, or what I learned immediately, is depending upon where you go in your university, data means fundamentally different things to fundamentally different people, okay? They're the computer scientists, they've got it, they understand it, they can get it done. They don't even need you, by the way, okay? And then there's other folks, and I'm thinking of primarily the social sciences, that, you know, they have data that, you know, it's video, it's, you know, it's completely different than the other. And so if your point is that we don't have much structure, that's true. I think we're going to have to work through this, because I do believe that it's going to come. Now, I think your second point was, yeah, but it cost us money to do this, right? I mean, if you think about setting up a data management issue or repository as we did, you have to invest money in people in order to make this work. And unfortunately, that's the case. And then my unfortunate argument is our budgets have been so flat, we haven't been able to reward people the way we should in data management. I think I got that question. Is that more or less? Yeah. The other one that people complain about are the mentoring plans. Remember, the mentoring plans are out of our hands. Okay, that's a competes bill activity. It's put upon federal agencies. We cannot do anything about it. So even though it came up high on the list, there's not a whole lot we can do with that. Please.
So one of your discussions are predicated on the idea NSF grants have to look the same as they look to 1951, which I actually have a copy of my PhD advisor's 1951 proposal. But you know, with things like web resources and things, it seems like NSF could actually populate the current and pending support from federal databases if everybody got their act together. It seems like the SciCV could replace actually having a CV in the proposal. And as I keep saying here at FDP, my dream is that you have a cover page with a lot of web links and all the information that you guys want, and half my grant, which is all of the associated pages with it, could just be obtained by web links. Universities have all, you know, your DUNS number is in the university pages. So I would just like you to think in terms of, if you want to reduce the burden, in what kind of world we could have if these kinds of data were actually put in repositories where PIs didn't have to fill out all these forms. And then the other one I just want to add, since I have the microphone, is one of the problems with the postdoctoral mentoring program is that NSF, when the vision was to have such a thing, was that it would be a shared responsibility between the institution and the PI. But almost every institution thinks it's a PI problem. And that's also reflected in your survey. And I think that, you know, if NSF wanted to change the way they describe it, they should have the mentoring program have a component which says, what is the institution doing to mentor postdocs? And what is the PI going to do?
Okay, so let's start with mentoring, because I think what you just said is absolutely the case. PIs obviously do the mentoring individually, and so they have to contribute. But I think your point is that there's some generic information that institutions have that can benefit that. That's a very simple thing to do, by the way. I mean, if you just, the way you pose the question would get you that particular point. But we will have to do it. There's just no way around it. But very good suggestion. Pre-population of all this information, I absolutely agree with you, but let me give you the problems. Okay, like Marty said, in '88 I was a program person. I don't think the 15 pages has changed since I was here in '88. So I mean, I'm old. There's a couple of issues. So let me kind of move one step forward. That is, we've even tried to get you not to put links in your bibliography. Okay, so if you watch carefully, we don't want you to put your connections to all these papers in, because we view that as, quote, unfair to the others who might not have done that. Okay, and so now you start to think about pre-populating a lot of the stuff. The institutions would have to work with us, okay, which again, I'm fully supportive. But if you start to have the whole proposal be, quote, virtual or available some other place, boy, I feel sorry for the reviewers. You know, it would be an impossible. Okay. I'm sorry, what? We're gonna get it fixed right here.
So all of the parts of the proposal not associated with the project description should be links. So current and pending could be a federal database.
Yep, okay.
All of the stuff about your institution descriptors, what office to go to, all of the stuff could be a page required of all institutions, that it be accessible. All of the bio pages that they want you to fill out could be
I got it.
Redone.
Okay, the Science CV and the ORCID were the two original requests that didn't go anywhere. Okay, so I mean, that's exactly his point. The Science CV was supposed to be a, quote, I guess, federated idea, as well as the ORCID activity. Apparently it fell apart, as I understand the story. So let me also add to that. I don't find that too surprising. So as a PI or as an SPO, I would want one format for all proposals to the federal government, right? Okay, now, for those of you that submit a lot to NIH and to NSF, you know fundamentally that we review differently. We can't even be in concert on how we review proposals. And then you're going to have a common format between all agencies. So my only point is that it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And to be very specific, I find the very fundamental difference between NIH and NSF is that they have a standing review that's public. We do not. Our reviewers are anonymous. They also tend to go by numbers. We give program officers the ability to be able to make decisions based upon justifications to a higher level review. So again, there are some fundamental differences in the way these organizations work, and therefore it seems that, I mean, I'd love to have one format. Let me just say that. Okay. Please.
Hi, I'm wearing my faculty hat now today. So the question I have, you mentioned about NSF big ideas, and one of the fundamental beauty of NSF is having those unsolicited proposals. People can come in and with the different ideas and try to get some initial starting point. And then once it's started, they can go to the other agencies, right? Now, so when you have those focused areas, and for example, the infrastructure is a really great idea because you can't get without having, many other agencies support this. So the question is, how do you balance with the limited budget in terms of the unsolicited ones and with these big ideas and with mid-infrastructures, but those are expensive items.
I'm ready. Okay, so let me add to this question because this is really a valuable discussion. The other big issue that tends to come up when we talk about the big ideas is what happens if you get a flat budget? What are you going to do? Okay, so let's kind of throw that all together. First of all, the big ideas are not the only things that NSF funds. We will not put all of our money in those 6 research areas, as it turns out. It's just not going to happen. We're a community building activity. We fund education and research. We're here to build a workforce, so we're not simply going to build a workforce in 6 areas. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is if you take a look at the current funding in those 6 areas, so when we come to the process ideas in a bit, in those 6 areas, we have funding already going on in all those areas right now. So should we get increases in budget, we will have a much bigger impact. But we still can fund in those areas right now. So from the point of view of diverting resources, I would argue if our budgets stay relatively flat, those big ideas are going to see about the same funding they're seeing now because we are built on the community. Okay, now let's go to the process ideas. The process ideas, the infrastructure one that you're pointing at, we really have to do it.
And I agree. I think
there's just no choice because there's so much in that gap that we're not able to do that are so important to this country that we're just going to have to do it. And in some respects, if that starts to get flooded with proposals and it turns out the limit's going to be moved to 70 million in that area, something's going to have to give. Okay, but I think that one's important enough. We don't see a lot of proposals in that area, by the way, but we still see some important ones. The other 3, though, in the process ideas which are the 2050 fund and the Convergence and includes. So 2050 obviously will not happen unless you get new funding. I mean, that's just the nature of that quote idea. And I shouldn't speak for the director here, but unlike what happened at NIH where they taxed everybody to build a fund, I doubt that'll happen at NSF. I say I doubt, because there's just insufficient funds to fund all the other things we want to do. So on the convergent research, it's an interesting one because we kind of do that already in its small range. If you take a look at any of the cross-foundation initiatives, a lot of them have that, quote, interdisciplinary convergent idea. This is just kind of more forcefully going after areas and topics. Now, includes, we're going to do. I mean, if the director was standing here, if you could have seen her talk, she is the team captain, and she'll tell you that. And in fact, she just got finished, she talked about the fact that she got in an interview and someone asked her, okay, the 10 big ideas, Obama calls you up and says you can fund one, which one you're funding? And she said, includes, because that impacts everything we do in this country. So we will do that. Now, if the funding isn't available, then we're probably going to do it in a lesser way, but we still have to do it. I mean, so I hope I answered your question. The other argument we get into, by the way, NSF typically doesn't do this, right? NSF typically does not shoot out and say, okay, here's what we're going to do for the next 10 years or whatever. We typically are a community building activity. And so the question is, uh-oh, you've been told to do it, whether you got money or not. And our answer is, we will do it, it just won't have the impact, and it will be done within our current funding. Help you?
Yeah, definitely. And by the way, I want to say, NSF is doing much, it's very, very efficient compared to many other agencies.
So are you talking about our dwell time? Looking over here, they don't like me to talk about dwell time. Happy to answer any other questions you might have. I know you've got lunch coming up. Thank you very much. Sorry. Okay, Gene, you're going to have to answer the same question. Oh, sorry.
Well, Gene, you mentioned earlier that the mentoring program or mentoring plan is something that a lot of people object to or claim is a very time-consuming requirement. And you said that this was a requirement across all federal agencies, but that's not really the case. So Gene can explain that to you.
Okay. What I hope I said, it was in the Competes bill.
That's correct. It was in the 2009 version, and NSF is the agency that's implemented that requirement.
And no other. So see, I get to ask questions now. Okay, so Gene, who and why don't the others?
It was a statutory requirement.
Just
other
for
agencies
us. Just
on
for
us. So, but other agencies could do it should they so desire.
But they weren't required like we were.
Right.
And we just checked the current one that passed last week, and there's no statements on it in it, so therefore we're still bound to 2009. See, we all rely on Gene. Anything? Great. Hope you have a successful conference.